Good morning. Kerr County Commissioners Court is now in session. It is Monday, June the 28th, 2021, 9 o'clock in the morning. If you would, please rise for the prayer and pledge, which will be led by Commissioner Letts.
Our Heavenly Father, I'd like to thank you for being a part of our lives and for help guiding us, and that your Spirit has helped really truly guide us in our daily lives to help us do what is right. I'd like to thank you for the recent rains you've blessed upon the lands, and we ask those to continue. We ask you to please guide this court in our deliberations today. I ask these things in Christ's name. Amen.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Please be seated. Welcome, everyone. We've got a busy day. We've got a regular Commissioners Court meeting, and then we have a budget workshop. And just letting everybody know, I've got a heavy juvenile docket at 1:30, so but I can't miss. So, but the first part of the meeting is always public input. This is where we invite the public to offer any input to the court that you would like to. We'd ask you to limit your remarks to 3 minutes if you want to do that. And if there's something you want to talk about that is on the agenda, we ask that you wait until that agenda item is called, rather than use the public input time. So public input is for things that are not on the agenda. So, is there anyone from the public that would like to offer input to the court? Mr. Mark Mosier, who's president of our airport board.
Thank you, Judge, Commissioners. I come to you, I guess as a concerned citizen, also president of the airport board. It's been all over the media the last few days, and the reason I bring it up now, we can discuss it further in the budget workshop, that there's been a large change at the legislative level in funding that affected 5 communities, including ours and Fredericksburg's, and it had to do with a pullback on the previously budgeted funds for the budget year we're currently discussing. And that's $1.8 million to our airport, where we have a 10% match. So the message I'm getting now is to just stay put. I've had extensive conversations, including the director of aviation DOT, and they're trying to get these funds back. It's about $15 million. It went to Odessa for the border security. They're going to lengthen the runway, build a large hangar there at Odessa Airport, not Midland, but Odessa Airport. And anyway, my message now is don't change our budget, stay put, and we're working on it. The judge at Fredericksburg has already drafted letters, and we're going to be doing similar at the board level. So if you read anything about it, just know it's in process. We're hoping to get that back. Thank you.
And for those of you that don't know, we have Commissioner Harris, who's under the weather, is available by speakerphone. So he is present with us and is in communication. Any other public input? Thank you. Then let's move on to Commissioner's comments. And we'll start with Precinct 1.
Happy to get the rain.
Good.
Good amount of rain in Precinct 2, and an announcement effective July 23rd, I'm going to retire. And the reason I'm going to retire is because I'm selling my ranch, and I bought another house, and it's not in Precinct 2. So therefore, according to state law, I can no longer be county commissioner if this all goes through. So anyway, there'll be more details than a press release on that, but just give everybody a heads up. And the other thing is, in Precinct 2, a lot of chatter about new developments. Verde Creek Ranch, number 1, people are concerned about that. 5-acre lots, they want it to be 25-acre lots, okay? Some of the surrounding neighbors. In Center Point Village, a lot of chatter there about it's too dense a development, okay? And the biggest concern is water. And so, as everybody recalls, neither one of these things move forward unless they demonstrate, especially in Center Point Village, unless they demonstrate availability of water sufficient to supply those homes. So this will come forward, but anyway, just a lot of chatter and letters to the editor and ads and all that kind of stuff. And the thing is, we'll look at all those things and follow the law and go from there. So that's it.
Precinct 3.
I'll just follow up a little bit on your comments, Commissioner. One, sorry to see you leave. But second, on water availability studies are mandated by the water code. It's not something that's just arbitrary, is there water there? There are very strict rules in the water code as to what that means. So people that want to look at what that means, they're welcome to go to the water code. I can't remember the section right now, but that's where the language is. It was enacted by the legislature, and that governs what water availability actually is. Other than that, we've had a couple of rains, unexpected. Again, last night we had a shower. Temperatures are well below normal for this time of year, which is really nice. So everything looks good. That's it.
Commissioner Harris, do you have anything you'd like to report on Precinct 4?
I missed out on the showers last night, but we've been blessed so far, I think. One thing I want to mention is, for me anyway, it's hard to believe that this Sunday will be the 4th of July already. It seems like this year is zipping by. And I want to encourage people to enjoy their Independence Day and celebrate accordingly and wear your red, white, and blue.
Good.
Good. And speaking of that, one thing I would add, Comfort has a very large, for a small town, parade. A lot of people in Kerrville attend it. It's a lot of fun. It's a small town USA putting on the 4th of July. You'll have everything from fire trucks and people just walking and old tractors and cars and all kinds of stuff, bands and dancers. So it's a lot of fun. It goes down High Street. It is Saturday. I believe it's starting at 10. I'm not positive. Check on the time. It usually starts at 10 o'clock.
Okay, countywide, the only thing that I would like to report is we've had a lot of talk about our public defender's office. We had our oversight board meeting last week, and all of our issues are resolved. They will be leasing the entire building at 550 Earl Garrett, both the top floor and the bottom floor, and that will be at market rates. That'll be somewhere in the neighborhood of almost $90,000 a year rent that we pay Kerr County to house the PDO. And remind everybody that's 31 employees is the goal. I think currently they told us, I wrote it down, we have 24 right now in that public defender's office. And they have 4 more coming here within the next couple of months, which will take us up to 28. So the goal is 31. We're almost fully staffed. And remind everyone, this is 5 counties. It's Bandera, Medina, Kendall, Gillespie, and Kerr. And it's housed a half a block down here just to the north. So we're relieved to have all that in place.
And it's working very well, except from the judicial side.
Well, and yeah, just on that, the status report, they told us that they have 1,552 case assignments already. They have already disposed of 169 cases. It's truly incredible what they're doing, and it's going to save all counties a whole lot of money on indigent defense. And for those that don't remember, we have first year, we're finishing out our first year grant, which is an 80-20 match. The state of Texas actually gave us $2.5 million for the 5 counties to do this. First time the state's ever helped us on indigent defense. Well, no, we get a small token every year. That's like $50,000. But this is, and the other thing about this PDO, we are the talk of the state. In fact, we're even the talk of the nation. That 5 counties have gotten together and we're doing this, and we're saving taxpayers a lot of money and providing our constitutional obligations to provide these people defense.
You make it sound like it was really smooth and easy, but
No, it wasn't.
I think you've just touched on the facts that prove that it was not.
Well, once the plane is landed, we don't have to worry about the bumpy ride.
Has it landed?
It's landed.
Okay.
Okay, with that, we'll move on to our consideration agenda. Item 1.1 is to consider, discuss, and take appropriate action regarding a resolution opposing the federal government's 30 by 30 land preservation goal. Commissioner Harris, you have the floor.
Thank you. I want to say that this 30-30 plan is nothing new, but it has really been brought to the front burner by...
Stand by. I'm trying to turn up the volume.
And we had a town hall.
So-
A couple weeks ago. It was very well attended, and we thrown out there as far as what is coming forward with this. And I want to thank Terry Hall for bringing this to my attention. I mean, I kind of got blindsided. It was one of the many
Can you put it near the microphone?
executive orders that President Biden threw out there right off the bat, and some things kind of got lost. But anyway, after looking at this and how well it's attended, Mrs. Hall and I started working on a resolution pertaining to this and protecting property rights, especially here in the Hill Country. We looked at several things. We threw it back and forth. I even sent it to Harley Ballou, and he looked at it. He had a concern about everything. He had concern about one item. We addressed that, and now I think the resolution that we come up with really fits us to a T, fits Kerr County. I think it fits much of Texas, and so with that, I'm going to turn it over. You probably have some people coming in to talk about it. I have had nothing but positive feedback on this, and so I'm excited to present it. And I asked Mrs. Hall if she would read it for us today, and I guess she's there. I hope so.
She is.
She is.
And so I'm going to turn it over to some other people and let them talk.
Commissioner Harris, Mr. Letts, I met with Ms. Hall briefly before the meeting, and I did have two minor modifications to the resolution. And I think she was agreeable with both of them. On the last whereas, add some wording so it will read, placing private lands into permanent conservation status without the private property owner's consent will cause dramatic and irreversible harm to economies in many states, including Texas. Adding the language without the private property owner's consent. And the reason for that is there are conservation easements that have various forms. Some people choose to do them, not many, but that is that. And then on the other, on item 2, under the now therefore be it resolved, the first line would read, the county further opposes designation of federal lands in Kerr County as wilderness. Adding the word federal there, and that is because there are Kerr Wildlife Management Area is a state property that is limited access because it's a research facility. They also allow the public onto it, but the key here is federal. And Ms. Hall was okay with both of those. Ms. Hall, do you want to read the resolution?
Should I read it reflecting those changes?
Yes.
Okay. All right.
Well, first of all, identify yourself.
Yes. Good morning. My name is Terry Hall. And today I get to say I'm representing a new group here in Kerr County. It's We the People, Liberty in Action. And I'm also representing our statewide group, Texans Uniting for Reform and Freedom, which has been a long time group that has fought for private property rights around the state, usually as it relates to transportation, but certainly as it relates to this, because we feel like it's very much like the Trans-Texas Corridor in a way, in that it's a land grab. So with that, I will read the resolution. Whereas Kerr County is a legal and political subdivision of the state of Texas for which the county commissioners is authorized to act, and whereas Kerr County contains approximately about 708,506 acres of land situated in central Texas, and whereas the well-being, health, safety, welfare, economic condition, and culture of the county, its businesses, and its citizens depend on private land ownership and the use of these resources, and whereas many of Kerr County's businesses and its citizens are involved in or otherwise depend on industries that utilize private lands and their resources, including farming, ranching, exotic wildlife production, hunting, youth camps, and other outdoor recreation. And whereas in Section 216 of Executive Order 14008, President Biden directed the Secretary of the Interior in consultation with the Secretary of Agriculture and other senior officials to develop a program to conserve at least 30% of the lands and waters in the United States by 2030, which is called the 30 by 30 program, America the Beautiful, or similar successor program. And whereas under the 30 by 30 program, some 680 million acres of our nation's lands would be set aside and permanently preserved in its natural state, preventing the productive use of these lands and their resources. And whereas there is no constitutional or statutory authority for the President, the Department of Interior, the Department of Agriculture, or any other federal agency to set aside and permanently preserve 30% of all land and water in the United States, and no such authority is referenced in Executive Order 14008. And whereas placing private lands into permanent conservation status without private property owners' consent will cause dramatic and irreversible harm to the economies of many states, including Texas, and in particular rural counties such as Kerr County, whose citizens depend on private lands for their livelihoods. And now therefore be it resolved by the Kerr County Commissioners of Kerr County, Texas, that the county opposes the 30 by 30 program, including its objective of permanently preserving 30% of the nation's lands in its natural state by 2030, or similar program that will set aside and prevent the productive use of millions of acres of our lands. 2, the county further opposes the designation of federal lands in Kerr County as wilderness study areas, wildlife preserves, open space, or other conservation land, thereby restricting public access to such lands and preventing the development and productive use of the resources on or within such lands. 3, the county supports the continued private ownership of land in the county, recognizing the nation's need for domestic resources of minerals, energy, timber, food, and fiber. 4, the county recognizes and supports the state of Texas water rights system, appropriation or rule of capture, and other state laws and programs governing water rights and water use, and opposes any federal designation of waters and water courses within the county that would impair or restrict water diversions and uses authorized under Texas law. 5, the county also maintains that any land or other rights that are required to fulfill the 30 by 30 program's objectives should be acquired only from willing landowners for the payment of full and fair market value for all rights and interests acquired, and not through regulatory compulsion.
Okay.
Commissioner Letts, I'm sorry, but I didn't fully catch that first tweet that you wanted to make to that, the last whereas. Could you restate that again?
Yes, it's placing private lands into permanent conservation status without the private property owner's consent will cause dramatic. So it's adding without the private property owner's consent after the word status.
I agree with that. And the second thing that you had, I understand completely. And with those changes, modifications, I move for approval.
Second.
Motion's been made by Commissioner Harris, seconded by Commissioner Letts to approve the resolution as presented. Discussion. And one thing that I would recommend that be included in this is in your first whereas and down in the now therefore, to identify Kerr County Commissioners Court, because it is a commissioner's court. It's not the commissioners individually so much as it is the court.
Good.
And I would probably go ahead and put Kerr County on there as well, Ms. Hall. I think that makes it clear that it is this court that will be passing this resolution. So I would make that proposed addition.
Where would you
Where it says,
which the Kerr County?
at the end of the first sentence,
Yeah, there.
which the add Kerr County Commissioners, and then right after Commissioners, put court.
Okay.
And do that in the resolution part too. And then that way we have it clear.
And it'll be grammatically correct also.
I'm good
I know.
as well. I'm fine.
I can't help it, I'm sorry. I'm a wordsmith to the end.
Be more specific about the county.
Yeah.
Now we have other people that want to speak on this. Thank you, Ms. Hall. I have Rich Paces. If you would identify yourself and where you live in the county.
Yes, sir. My name is Rich Paces. I'm a resident of the Center Point.
Okay.
Federal conservation mandates have no constitutional basis and have the potential to devastate the Texas economy. Federal 30% conservation goal would interfere with the state's constitutional and traditional power over land and water uses. This is federal overreach, and we must oppose it and protect our county's land and water for the people of our county. Conservation easements have been identified by the Biden administration as a primary tool that will be used to place more private land under the 30 by 30 federal initiative. The administration has stated that 12% of America's lands are currently permanently protected and identify areas such as wilderness, national parks, and conservation easements in perpetuity on private lands as classifications within this category. All conservation and preservation easements should receive a special use permit from the county, which can be denied if they conflict with the county's plan. It is critical that Kerr County exercise this authority to protect the tax base and prevent further encroachment of federal ties that can impair our usage plans. I therefore ask the Commissioners Court to pass a resolution to protect our county from this outright stealing of private property by the federal government and prohibit county agencies from using discretionary funds or staff support for projects involving perpetual conservation easements. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Priest. The next person I have that's requested to speak is Ronald Campbell.
Yes, my name is Ron Campbell. I'm a resident here in Kerrville, and I want to express my hope that you all pass this resolution to protect landowners from losing their land. I've been a rancher and a landowner for many years of my life, and I just cannot see how we can allow such a land grab to happen in this country. I support this resolution 100%.
Thank you. Next, I have the Brian McDowell.
Yes, hello. My name is Brian Mcdowell.
I apologize.
That's fine, sir. I live here in Kerrville, and I'm in support of the resolution. I don't believe that we should have any federal interference in Texas, in our county, especially when it comes to our water and our land. Let us as citizens and landowners or whatever go ahead and govern all that. So I just wanted to say that I'm in support of the resolution. I thank you.
Thank you. And I apologize, Mr. McDowell.
That's fine.
Any other comments or discussion? The only thing that I would add is, and I think you're going to probably get a unanimous support of this resolution, but there's really nothing we can do at this point other than voice our opinions. And that's, I think, what this resolution is intended to do. And as a court, I encourage us to stand together and express our opinion that this is something that we do not want to see happen, but we understand Washington is going to make the decision, not us. But here we are. So with that, I'll ask for a
Judge,
vote.
let me say something real quick.
Sure.
I agree with you, but I also think that we can give our legislators courage to stand up when they see us standing up like this, as well as other counties. And I think this can kind of have a mushroom effect. And like I said, give our legislators some courage to stand up and protect us. So that's what it's all about, I think. That's all I got.
Any other discussion? Those in favor, raise your hand or say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Unanimous, 5-0. Thank you. And then we'll incorporate the changes. We'll incorporate those little minor revisions and have it signed and posted. So. Next item on the agenda. Let's see. I'm looking for my IT.
He's out in the hallway.
We have a visitor. Bruce, are you out there? Yes, sir. I'm going to go ahead and call 1.11 because we do have somebody that's here from out of town to address the court. And I understand that you have exigent circumstances that you need to return as soon as possible.
Yes, thank you.
And please identify yourself. You're with RX Technology, right?
Yeah, Paul Elliott with RX Technology.
And they are the county's IT consultants.
Or security. Or security.
Yes.
Did you
It will pass.
I'll pass it.
Stand.
Oh, thank you.
3.
Or do you need it?
Just hand them off.
Yeah, sorry.
Got it.
So it's been about a year since you've been here, is that right? Is it about a year?
Over.
Over you.
Yeah, we don't count last year, I guess, so.
Yeah.
Well, we count last year.
Yeah, I try to forget about it. A little bit of an overview, but Kurt asked for scope of work and some details going on, and some of the things that we had discussed really initially 2 years ago about things and upgrades that needed to be done in the infrastructure. It was kind of pushed out to 2021, and this year is kind of right. We're not gonna be able to pull everything out of that. However, with some of the age of some of the systems that you have, and this isn't really as a doom and gloom or a FUD tactic. It's just something's going to happen at this point, right? The equipment is, you have an old Chevy, it's going to go. The equipment in technology terms is obsolete. Some of the things that we have to do just to be able to get past CGIS audit are things that should have been done a year and a half ago whenever the operating systems were expired, so to speak, right? There's no patches, there's no security updates to keep them going so they stay in the same state. So we're doing a little bit of that just to get through CGIS, and I think that there's some consideration there that we've already gone through. At this point now, under the scope that we're looking at, there's a few things. They're already going through and making some changes to the network configuration. That's the hardware that controls how your information gets from point A to point B and back. And that's great. There's just a few other considerations. There's a firewall system that is long since seen its last day.
Let me interrupt you for a second.
Yes, sir.
RX Technologies, whatever, we brought in here to look at security. Okay, you're saying a lot of things now about security. The scope of this is much larger than security. It's the operational readiness of the system. It's how it integrates, how it talks to one another, how it interfaces with other systems outside, how it interfaces with the cloud. So I would think it'd be beneficial if you give me, or the rest of the court, a little bit of information about your company's expertise in a broad scope of things, not just security.
That's great. I appreciate that. So we're really a two-pronged organization. One is doing IT systems and management for organizations, and the other side is we do surveillance and access control, so construction type. But our breadth of knowledge is both physical and technologically IT systems.
I'm talking about the total architecture, not the subsets called security. I'm talking about the architecture of the entire system. What's your expertise there?
That's really what we focus on, right? It's not just the individual subsets. We're looking at the entire thing. So from where the information comes into the building, what happens inside of the building, who has access to what systems, how that gets pushed back out, what liabilities do you have in place. So in a sense, to us it's the same thing, because we're always going to say, here's where you need to be. And then sometimes budgetary conditions say, well, this is where we can be. And then we try to get to as healthy of a state with that. But we don't particularly say, hey, we're just looking at reactionary causes, right? We're more preventative maintenance. So we're looking at making sure that all of the technology that's in use is solidified up front, rather than having to deal with a problem on the back end, because it's much more expensive.
What you were explaining is obsolete machinery and software puts us at risk.
Yes.
And so the county is at some risk right now, although we have secure servers, and the information we need to have secure is secure. What we're trying to do is get to the point where we can use the cloud for the non-essential stuff, for the stuff that doesn't need to be secured by the county and protected. In other words, public access kind of stuff, so that some stuff can be stored in the cloud and accessed by a vendor or someone else, or if we keep county records and those other things secure, which you guys have been helping us do.
Yes, yes.
So we're wanting to get to that point.
Yeah, and then the stuff that houses that data, you know, it's an old Ford.
Yeah.
Right? It's running, you know, it gets me point A, point B, but it's 2 years past the point where we should have done some maintenance on it. So there's like this, we're just waiting for something to happen. And I think long term it's gonna be more expensive for that recovery because the amount of time and the amount of data, right? You have a ton of historical records and everything else that people need access to. SQL servers are just giant databases that are serving this out, and they're running on, you know, equipment that's well past its prime. And it could be anything on there, just one little chip on a board, right? It's nothing, there's no warranty, you can't find that board to replace it. So you'd be doing this kind of backtracking to recover information.
Well, we're in budget considerations now, that's why we're here and talking about this.
Yeah.
We need
Yeah,
to bite
for
the
sure.
bullet.
So a couple of the considerations, I think that, you know, if we're going to highlight some of the bigger ones, right? Is the host servers. It's consolidating multiple devices that are aging into a couple of devices, and then having them as virtual servers within that. I know it sounds like you put your eggs in one basket, but the benefit of that is you can take that virtual server if something happens to the host, and you can run it on another device. So you can bring it back up and recover in an hour or two, as opposed to days or weeks. That plays into the next line that says SAN, which is, I'm sorry, I'm on the second page there with the, it's just a scope written out, is the SAN, which is just basically a giant storage device that will back up those servers. And if one fails, it'll act as the host server. So we turn it on and it becomes the host, so it takes over where the last one left off. So instead of, again, recovery time of days or weeks, you're talking about a couple of hours. The third line, the Fortinet, is a enterprise-grade firewall. So now basically your network system is a funnel of information coming in and out. And in best practice, it needs to be straws. We need to know who and what is going on. That way we can isolate incidences if they occur, and we have a tighter control on the security overall and the connectivity to each of the remote offices.
Is this like a detection software?
No, it's a firewall, so it sits at the edge of the internet and it protects you from all of the malicious actors or kids out there scanning and trying to get in. It monitors the information coming in and out so it can filter things, right? Keeps inappropriate sites and things like that going, but that's kind of a secondary function there. We just want to make sure we're blocking links to malicious files and things like that. That plays into that ransomware that you hear so much about.
That's one of the things you're doing for us now.
Yeah, and there's only so much we can do up to that point. Some of these fill the gaps to make that something that is a true accomplishment, so we can really protect as well as possible. Nobody is 100% invulnerable to that. Your weakest link are end users, right? So if they go into their Gmail and they click a link, they can unleash something that ends up encrypting all the files. We could say, okay, hey, let's limit that ability to go out and click those links because we can block them off at the firewall. Third part of that is Office 365, and that's really the only cloud component of this conversation. Instead of hosting the data internally, you think, you have 400, give or take, emails, and a lot of them are near 100 gigabytes, and I know the arbitrary number here, but if you bear with me. So you have, this inbox, if you will, it's got 100 gigabytes of data, and you start to talk about the size of that, you're getting some real storage internally. With managing that storage and backing it up and making sure that everything is it stays running smoothly. It can be a full-time job for one employee, right? So you start to think about the cost of Office 365, it starts to offset because they manage that infrastructure. And keep in mind, we still have the filter, the email filter for antivirus and ransomware detection in front of that. But it takes the onus off the IT team to be able to manage that data and that interaction. And it also, the cost offset, I guess, is that, you know, all the internal computers are updated with the latest Office suite of products. So it kind of it makes sense at this point, instead of going out and purchasing a bunch of Office licenses. You break it out over a monthly, and then you have that plus your email hosted, and you don't have to worry about that storage, that data, that backup. All of that's taken care of.
And this is a monthly cost you have on? This is like $60,000 a year for this?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep. And I added that in under the timeline just because I want to make sure they kind of stood out when you're looking through there, because.
And that includes updating any contracts and so on? Is that part of the service?
That part of the service is just with Microsoft directly. So they're hosting.
There's no additional.
No, that's it for that part of it.
Are there fees that kick in when there's a certain amount of storage used?
Yes, but we're talking about internal policy, about retention, archiving records to keep your inboxes smaller. Just not to go too much of a rabbit hole, but efficiencies with email. 100 gigabytes is really too much. You're going to notice less slowdown. It would be easier to just take your stuff and archive it. You still have access to it in another folder, but keep your inbox much smaller. It'll be more reactive and run smoother for you, incidentally. But yeah, I think, you know, if you can get them down to 40 or 50, it makes more sense as far as managing that. And a little bit, there was just the additional for that, which is migrating, because you don't want to lose any of your emails, right? So we're talking about taking that data and then moving it over, and working with Bruce and his team to make sure that all gets transferred over. It'll be seamless. One day it'll be internal, and the next day you'll come in, open your Outlook, and it'll be internal. So there's not going to be a downtime associated with that. There's a switch, it will happen over a weekend, but still it's a small window where that happens, and your email will recover from that, within an hour or so. They're already making some changes on the internal network. This one's a little bit fluid, but we were talking about the Fortinet and some switches and things that's just how the wires connect the different buildings into the computers. The way it's set up now is it's not manageable without having to sign in to a switch, sitting there watching it, right? It doesn't have that layer of connectivity. Like I mentioned earlier, we don't want the funnel, we want the straw, so we can see who's connecting and what data is being moved around. I think that's important, especially not just proactively, but for remediation if something occurs. We need to be able to see what's going on there. It'll shorten your window and keep you open, so to speak, instead of having to close everything down if there's an incident. And then staffing, I think right now we're working with Bruce's team. We see, and I just used my experience in the field with other organizations, similar size and scope. Right now, you're right on that line. I think that, when projects come in, those are getting pushed further and further if you don't have an additional, if you don't have somebody else to help out on the back end. Because right now I think they're sitting at 4, and I really would recommend y'all look at budgeting for an additional IT person. And it could be a mid-tier, right, a level 2, as opposed to a 1, which is entry level 2, and then 3, engineer. I think you could look around at 2, even a 1, if you had somebody that you could internally promote for projects.
Now, you're saying we are shorthanded now to manage and ride herd over what we have, or the coming changes?
Support, great, right? You make a call or you send an email, you're going to get support. I think things are running smoothly there. When you have any kind of a project where, hey, this department wants to implement this or do this, now that skews that, right? Because they've got to pull resources from that support, and you're going to wait longer. And I think, especially with some of these other things, some of this will help, right? The networking and the new servers will help to smooth that out, but projects are projects. They're just different departments are going to have different needs, and they're going to bring something up, and then that's going to throw things into a bind. I think that right now you're kind of on that line of managing that pretty well, but I think I'd recommend y'all hire somebody else for additional support in the IT department.
You know, the problem I'm having with this discussion is we're looking at the scope of work. Let me just say Kerr County's information system is of vintage 10 years ago. The capability today, the new system would be completely different probably than what we have. And I hear you talking about switches and personnel and this kind of, that's so far down in the weeds compared to what I'm trying to understand is what do we have, okay? Where's it deficient in light of today's technology, okay? And what changes will we need to make? Not at the switch level, not at the personnel level, but at the architectural level.
So, yeah, the
I mean,
idea here
I would
is,
believe in if it ain't broke, don't fix it, okay?
yeah.
Too many times that we do things, in my life I've seen it, okay? Make it better and there's always a problem hiding somewhere. So what is it that what's our deficiency? What do we have relative to what it could be, and what are the risks associated with that, and what are the costs associated with it? So that's what I'm looking for. Is when we look at the scope of this thing, I need something that's better defined, not at the switch level of the scope, but
Kind of describing what you have now
right.
in a pretty standard term, and then being able to show why
Yeah,
those changes are necessary.
why are we looking at this subject? There must be some problems, okay?
Well, yes,
And,
yeah.
And security is important, but beyond security, just operating efficiency.
Well, yes, right. So the amount of how data gets transferred between each department, and again, you get into the weeds. In my head, I get into the weeds because you talk about how long it takes somebody to perform a task,
Yeah.
right? And that matters, even if it's a few seconds. But when you're talking about 400 or 500 people, those few seconds add up over time, right? And now we're at this point where, yeah, they work with it, they're used to it. But efficiency makes a big difference, and productivity is really the end game. And the other side of it is making sure that the systems stay on. The real cost is if something happens, how is that going to affect your financials over that time period? And that's kind of where this balances out. The aging stuff is just kind of like I call it hey, we really have to do something.
Mm-hmm.
The rest of it is how can we get a better efficiency out of it, right? And get up to CGIS and NIST standards you need to be on, but balance that out in a realistic way where I'm not just saying, hey, let's just wipe out the whole network and reinstall new stuff. That's not really where we're going. We're keeping a lot of the same servers. We're just going to make them into a virtual mobile kind of idea so that if something does happen, we don't anticipate it does, right? We have a new server, but if something happens to that server, we can turn around and spin it up somewhere else so that you don't have that downtime that costs the county a week or two of time. So, yeah, I can definitely draft it out. This is a little more preliminary because there's some changes. It's been a little fluid, but we're looking at the big picture of what the idea is. And I can definitely outline it with, here's what you have in place now. You know, you have all these individual servers where things are connecting. You have switches that aren't efficiently being able to transfer data between places.
That's what I'd like to
So
see.
they spend time spinning around trying to find it. Creates more traffic, which creates more problems on the network, right? So those are those things that escalate.
The two things a couple things, and I think you've addressed some of these. But one of the issues that I haven't heard you is our phone system. And I don't know if that's part of your review or not, but I understand, I think right now we have an internet-based system.
Yeah.
And there's, but it's also a very old system. I mean, it's at least Well, it was put in when we renovated the courthouse.
It was one of the first of these
Yeah,
of its type.
so anyway, I think that needs to be looked at because it doesn't work real well for a lot of people right now. That's one thing.
And to your point, we are reviewing that. It's just for the size of the scope of that, we want to make sure that we're doing our due diligence like we did on the rest, so we're still going through that. And I agree, there's probably some cost savings to be made there
Okay.
for them.
The other thing, when you talked about, the emails being moved to a cloud base. There are some departments that are required to use cloud-based because of their working with state agencies or other agencies or other counties or something like that. The system that we have or that we create has to be able to allow those offices that need cloud-based to do their work, to be able to access it off the same computers that they're using, but at the same time keep everything secure. That's possible. I mean, that can be done. That's a question.
Yes, absolutely. So email now, right, is hosted on the server, and then it goes. You're looking at a viewer on your computer, right?
Right.
The idea for the cloud is those emails still reside on your computer. You have access to them even if there's no internet. Not new ones, right? They can't get the new ones if there's no internet, but you still have them there. But the cloud's just waiting for you to restore internet, and then it will deliver that. So it keeps a copy in both places. It is encrypted there on the cloud server, right? It's just a server in a data center, and then it's all the way down to where you're at. So that information is secured, and then we also have a filtering system between that for a backup system. So if Office 365 goes down, which it has, you can go to the web page for the filter, log in, and still have access, especially if you're looking for something critical or urgent.
But beyond email,
Yeah.
there's other cloud-based systems that we have to use or we're beginning to have to use.
Yeah,
And
CJ
that
is,
will be compatible with what we're doing.
yes, that's the fourth, that's make sure that those things are in place so that they are able to communicate securely. And nobody else can intercept, that's
Right.
the biggest problem.
Okay. I mean, everyone knows I don't know a whole lot about this stuff,
Well,
but I
that's
think
not,
it's very helpful. This looks good to me.
well, that's my trouble. I don't think any of us up here know that much about it. And we're looking at a scope of having a contract for somebody to look at the total thing. I'm having a hard time reading what you're saying here. Here's the scope of work. Okay?
Yeah.
It ought to be, like I keep going back to the architectural level, okay? Here's the scope of what we would propose to do for Kerr County's information system and looking at it,
Agreed.
okay? I'm not arguing with this, I just don't have the feeling that this covers the full spectrum.
Okay. You're absolutely right. And so you're just trying to distill it down, but I'm perfectly capable of writing that out. But really, we have that information. Just, now that I know how you want to structure it, I can put it in there for you.
Okay.
Kind of one-to-one, here's what you have now. Right?
Sure.
Here's some limitations, here's what
Right,
we're planning.
right.
Here's the results.
Precisely.
Here's your additional benefits that are
Right.
not the intention, but will occur from this change.
Right.
Here's the cost.
Yeah.
And then
Here's the cost, yeah.
how much of the upgrade has to happen in order to change the uses now? So that for example, we have 48 servers now in the county. Will we have fewer servers after this is over with because some of them will be off-site?
Yes, you'll definitely have fewer physical servers, right? So it's easier to maintain and or recover, right? Because you don't have to worry
it's not
about
our headache.
so many vehicles that break down. You
Right.
you have two different points to be able to with redundancy of those. So you've got backup on that.
So the answer to this question may make part of the point. Some of those servers that are in use now, when they're taken out of use, what's going to happen to them? They'll be thrown away, aren't they?
Yeah, they're
Because they're obsolete.
shred the hard drives and get rid of them. There's no market.
So that's what we're talking about, is making it more efficient. This conversation started because we want to make sure that non-critical information is stored someplace off-site. The critical information of the county is stored here in our possession and protected by our very own server. It's as simple as that. That's what we're trying to get to.
That ought to be the lead into the scope.
Right. And the thing is that, as an example, we have like 130 laptops in the county. You couldn't get those during the virus epidemic. So we're behind in part. We're still catching up because of that. You just couldn't buy them. Everybody was doing work from home. So we got behind on that. We went into last fiscal year knowing we had to upgrade them all and that we didn't have enough and that some of them were obsolete, our laptops. And people were scrambling around here trying to get a new laptop. That problem isn't entirely over.
Right, right.
Yeah.
Excuse me, I forgot your name. Can you remind me?
Paul Elliott.
Elliott, okay. Mr. Elliott, I have to confess that this sounds like Sanskrit to me. I do not understand technology that well, and I think this is probably a better topic for a workshop, just to get together and be able to get down into the weeds, so to speak, so we understand what you're really talking about here. But basically what we're dealing with here is the county has a need to upgrade its IT architecture, as you put it.
Okay.
And that includes a number of different things that we probably need to discuss in a little bit greater detail. And I think we've kind of got you on the spot. And we're in a regular Commissioners Court meeting. We've got all kinds of business to transact today. And I know you have distractions back home that I want to be respectful of.
Thank you.
And so what I propose is that we go ahead and kind of stop where we are. We've got your report. I think it's handy. I think you know that I'm not telling you I understand everything that's on here, but it gets me in the ballpark. And why don't we reschedule for a workshop so that we can actually roll our sleeves up and get down to business and understand how we're going to upgrade our system.
Absolutely,
If you're-
I agree.
if you're okay
It
with
would
that.
save all these people from having to listen to that.
Yeah, well, I think they understand about as much as I do. So.
It's okay.
But I would ask you to do this, Paul, is that you get with Bruce and so that you can articulate real clearly what the difference is going to be for us with the need we just expressed. That we want to store some things so that it's accessible to vendors. That's not critical information to the county. The rest of it we house here. And then as far as what equipment has to be replaced, that kind of stuff, that's just a list of stuff. But how do we execute on what the central issue is? How does that happen?
Yeah.
At the desktop, you give me a description, I'm saving something, I send it that way or I send it this way. Is the operator responsible? Is there a fail-safe? That kind of stuff is what we need to know.
Okay.
If
Yeah,
you
I
can do
think
that,
plays
that'll
into
help.
what Mr. Mullins
We
was
appreciate
asking
your
for.
effort.
Yeah.
We really do, and we're pointed in the right direction, but I don't think we're going to be able to get there today.
I agree.
So,
Yeah.
with that, what I'm going to invite us to do is to come back on a workshop and be able to roll our sleeves up.
Excellent.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Thank you, thank you.
Oh, Bruce was hiding behind you all that time. I was looking for you out in the hallway.
I knew where he was. I could see him.
I couldn't see him.
Okay, moving on with county business. Let's go to item 1.2, which is to consider, discuss, and take appropriate action to approve the subscription agreement and agreement addendum with LexisNexis for the Hill Country Regional Public Defender's Office. And I know that the county attorney's been reviewing this contract.
I have reviewed this contract, and they've included the typical government provisions in it, and I have no other suggested changes.
The only question I have about this is there's two basic providers for legal research tools. There's Westlaw and LexisNexis. That's kind of the universe that we work within. And I know we have Westlaw for most of our departments. And I really didn't understand why we went with LexisNexis for this office. But I don't know if anybody here.
I can answer that.
Good.
We have LexisNexis. It's much cheaper than Westlaw.
Okay.
I prefer Westlaw. It's much easier for me to use, but LexisNexis is much cheaper.
Okay, that's what I want to know.
And I knew this is the preference that they wanted to use, I mentioned. So I make a motion to approve the contract with LexisNexis for the Hill Country Regional Public Defender's Office.
Second.
Question, is it in the budget?
Yes, it's in there.
It's in there, but yes, it's in the grant.
Okay.
It's in the grant.
Good.
Okay, a motion's been made by Commissioner Letts, seconded by Commissioner Ballou to approve the LexisNexis contract for the Hill Country PDO. Any other discussion? Those in favor, raise your hand or say aye.
Aye.
Okay, it's unanimous, 5-0. Next is item 1.3, consider, discuss, and take appropriate action on the status of the Hill Country Regional Public Defender's Office grant application for FY 2021-2022. To Mr. Letts.
This is really just an update, just for the court to be aware that that grant application is a sustaining grant, which is kind of, it's really updated for the next 4 years. We're in the first year of it. And it'll be a 2/3, 1/3, 2/3 covered by the state, 1/3. Kerr County will be filing the application soon. It'll be coming back to us at that time.
For the duration, each year it's the same?
Yeah, every year we have to resubmit it. And it's based on kind of the numbers we have. Currently, largely, it's basically budget issues. And we're working, myself, Judge Pena, with John Bowles and Perry to come up with a budget for next year. But that's one thing that's working forward.
So as this changes, which it will, then the numbers remain the same, or is there a way to?
The numbers will be adjusted by the TIDC. Okay. They have to approve it, but it'll be. I mean, the current budget's the guideline minus the
startup cost.
So what's our proposed action here?
There's no action.
There's no action.
Just an update.
Okay, good deal.
And just to supplement that, at our meeting last week, we did have the Executive Director of the Texas Indigent Defense Commission present, Jeff Burkhart, and we talked extensively about these grants. This first year grant is 80-20. The 5 counties matched the 20% of the budget. And in these subsequent years, the sustaining grants will be 1/3, 2/3, with the 5 counties matching the 1/3 portion of the budget. And we tried to pin him down because the report that we have from him right now has it down for 4 years. We've completed almost completed year 1, and we'd have 3 more. And I was very pleased to hear Jeff Burkhart say they plan to stay with us as long as we're doing it. So there's no guarantee that we're going to have a grant forever, but this is the state's contribution to help us with the indigent defense cost. And their plan is to stay with us on some matching basis going forward, beyond the original 4 years.
Good.
It demonstrates the difference in a funded mandate and an unfunded mandate.
Oh, Lord, does it.
You can imagine us trying to do this by ourselves, folks. That'd be pretty expensive.
Yeah. So we move on to the next agenda item, which is 1.4, to consider, discuss, and take appropriate action on the Hill Country Regional Public Defender's Office leasing of property located at 550 Earl Garrett Street here in Kerrville.
The judge kind of talked about this during his opening comments, but the original thought would be that they would need the top floor only. After relooking at it, they're going to need probably the entire first floor also due to requirements under the grant. How they, we looked at it originally as kind of putting two in one office, and TIDC kind of thought that was not a good idea. They need some space to meet with their clients. So anyway, it's on the agenda that the court noted that the current plan maybe going to have probably will be going to have the entire building. That it was a lot of discussion exactly how if Kerr County could lease it to the PDO, it's it. The other one's PD station. to the PDO, and then kind of recoup it back, and basically lease the apartment to ourselves. It was clearly said by TIDC that can be done, so we can lease it. The amount will be in the neighborhood of $90,000 a year, and we would probably just have a credit for our expenses.
So from a county perspective, this is good.
Yes.
Simplifies things.
It's good, but it may impact a little bit of some of the other issues that we're looking about for a bond issue on space. Because we had thought about moving some offices over there also. That won't be possible.
But the building next door.
Yeah. No, we're doing that.
Well, that's
the tax office.
And that's going to change. So.
That will free up space here, but it will have some impact on how we rearrange office space.
Okay.
And remember, that's the unfunded mandate, because we have to have a 12-person jury room for a county court of law, which moves into the tax office, which means we have to move the tax office, and it's like, dominoes. So we're moving the tax office out, in order to be able to provide for the unfunded mandate that the state requires us to have, a 12-person jury in county court of law now.
And the oversight committee at last Thursday directed, I don't know who they directed, it was you, me, others, to work on the lease.
Okay.
Someone's working on the
And
lease.
some of the particulars. The building has, there's gross square footage and net square footage. And the bowels of the building that has all the mechanical and everything in it, we don't charge lease space for that. The leasable space for the building is 2,828 square feet per floor, or 5,626 square feet total. And the going market rate, fair market value rate for a lease in Kerr County right now is $1.25 per square foot per month. And so you can figure that out. It's going to be approximately $90,000, $6,000. And so that everybody can connect all the dollar signs. We're not connecting dots, we're connecting dollar signs. For the matching part of this, and the good news that we got from TIDC is that they are going to fund a lease at this amount. They put those requirements in their grant to us, and so they're going to stand behind it. And so, if you talk about 1/3, 2/3, 60,000 of that 90,000 is coming from the state, and the other 30,000 is coming from the counties. And we allocate between the counties based upon our caseloads. And so Kerr County is about a third of the caseloads for the public defender's
So
office.
it's 10,000 a year.
So this is really substantial benefits coming to Kerr County to be able to provide this service.
And the other item on that is that there will be some build-out cost to get the building completely ready, and that will be borne by the county.
And that's not part of our original renovation.
Correct.
Right.
And what's the date of this occupancy by PDO?
As soon as they get that roof on.
Yeah, I know the date, ballpark.
I'd say middle of July.
Okay.
They'll start moving.
Okay.
They should start moving in. It's going to depend to them a little bit
Sure.
because there's some, if they want to move in and then do some remodeling while
Sure.
they're using part of the building, which would be, I recommend, but it'll be up to them a little bit.
Okay.
But
And not to keep, so that people understand, what we're going to have to do is create a training room for them that's going to be able to put all those attorneys in. So we're going to take two of those offices over there, knock down a wall, make one great big room where they can do their training. That's what it's going to take.
and some other office, but so it's just moving. It's nothing major.
1.5 for a minute. I need to be right back.
Anyway, but I don't think there's any action. I hear that lease will be coming to the court. I just wanted to update the court after the meeting last week.
Now, we bought the building outright,
Yes.
which means that this isn't really a return on investment. And this is kind of a question for the county auditor. How long is it before there's a return on the investment, or is this just a cash flow versus a purchase? There'll be cash flow from this, the way I'm hearing it explained.
There'll be cash flow. We put out $2.5 million in certificates of obligation to be paid back in 7 years.
Mm-hmm.
There's some question on whether all of these projects will be added to a bond issue later on.
Right.
And so the building and everything, if we stuck with the current plan, would be paid off in 7 years.
Okay.
And those tax anticipation notes for the $2.5 million, just remind everyone, we have that at 0.75% interest.
I remember that.
So,
But there is cash flow with this,
Yes.
is what I was trying to point out. There's that debt, but there's a cash flow in the end.
Right.
And this will reduce the amount that we would need from taxpayers in order to make payments on that debt.
Right. Because we're not going to run out and spend it. We're going to pay this thing.
Yeah, it goes towards the debt.
Right.
okay, it's a couple minutes after 10 o'clock. Why don't we take our morning recess, and we'll take up 1.5 when we come back. We'll be adjourned for 5 minutes. Let's come back to order. I apologize. We have to take the timed items at 10 o'clock before we come back to 1.5. So for those of you that are here for anything from 1.5 to 1.10, just be patient with us. The first item on our 10 o'clock docket is item 1.12. Consider, discuss, and take appropriate action for the Commissioners Court approval to seal coat the parking lot area at the Divide School located at 121 Divide School Road in Mountain Home, Texas. Kelly Hoffman.
Good morning. Mr. Bill Bacon contacted Commissioner Harris regarding the possibility of the Road and Bridge Department to seal coat the parking lot / driveway area at the Divide School off State Highway 41. The Road and Bridge Department would do the work and the Divide School would be responsible for paying for all materials. I did a breakdown of the materials and that would total $6,507.47. We already maintain the Divide School Road, and that road is on this year's seal coat, so we will be in that area. Our equipment will be there. Really, it won't be a better time to do it than.
Sounds like a win-win to me.
Yes. And so at this time, I ask the Commissioners Court for their approval for the Road and Bridge Department to seal coat approximately 32,200 square feet of parking and driveway areas at the Divide School located at 121 Divide School Road Northwest, and request that the Divide School pay $6,507.47 for the listed materials, and this is in precinct 4.
I move for
Question,
approval.
Can we do that? Can we do that? I mean, it's like we can't do it on private property. I realize this isn't private property, so I'm really asking the county attorney this. Are we setting a precedent here? Because we have a lot of school districts that probably would want us to do the same thing for them, and probably some other entities like school districts, not-for-profits, or whatever. Can we do that?
I think that we can do it. I think that
We've
it's been
done-
done before.
We've done VFDs, I know.
We can do governmental entities. We can't do
Governmental.
private.
Okay,
We've
so
done
that
it, yeah, we've
that
done-
answers my question. If it's a governmental entity, we can do it.
And we've done it for KISD. We did their parking lot once. We worked
Okay.
on the road.
Okay.
They repaid
Okay,
it.
you answered my question. Good deal. Thank
So
you.
they're paying for materials and we're providing the machinery and the manpower.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
Commissioner Harris made a motion, and I'll second.
Motion been made by Commissioner Harris, seconded by Commissioner Letts, to approve paving the Divide School parking lot. Any other discussion? Those in favor, say aye or raise your hand.
Aye.
Unanimous, 5-0.
Thank you.
Item 1.13. This is the public hearing for the revision of plat for Pack Saddle Acres lots 10 through 17. So I'm convening the public hearing. Is there anyone here that would like to speak on that topic? Pack Saddle Acres, lots 10 through 17. Anyone out there, Charlie? Okay. Then with that, we will adjourn the public meeting and move on to item 1.14, which is to consider, discuss, and take appropriate action for the court to approve a revision of plat for Pack Saddle Acres, lots 10 through 17. Charlie Hastings.
Thank you, Judge. This proposal revises 8 lots, lots 10 through 17, into 9 lots, and it removes right-of-way for Lariat Lane, a road that was never properly constructed. Each lot will be greater than 5 acres and must coordinate with TxDOT for driveways. Lots 15A, 16A, 17A, and 17B will have access from FM 1341. Lots 10A, 11A, 12A, and 13A and 14A will have access from Windmill Road and Green Oak Drive. Those driveway permits are coordinated through the county. Although Lot 14A has dual frontage on both FM 1341 and Windmill Road, we have a special note, number 9, on the plat that prohibits access from FM 1341. No sense in having 2 driveways, especially if you're right at the intersection of a highway and a road. You don't want any driveways in that vicinity. So they'll be able to safely come off of Windmill Road. They'll thank us for that later. These lots are located in Kerrville's ETJ, and they will be platted simultaneously through both the city and the city of Kerrville and Kerr County. The county engineer requests the court approve a revision of plat for Pack Saddle Acres, lots 10 through 17, volume 3, page 55, precinct 3.
I move for approval.
Second.
Motion's been made by Commissioner Letts, seconded by Commissioner Moser, to approve the revision of plat for Pack Saddle Acres lots 10 through 17. Any discussion? Those in favor, raise your hand and say aye.
Aye.
Unanimous, 5-0. Next is another public hearing, and this is a public hearing, this item 1.15, for a revision of plat for RH Ranch Lot 8. I convene the public meeting. Is anyone here that would like to speak on behalf of this topic? Charlie, is anyone outside?
We don't have anyone, Judge, to speak on this.
Since no one wants to speak at the public hearing, we will go ahead and adjourn the public hearing and move on to the next agenda item, which is item 1.16, consider, discuss, and take appropriate action for the court to approve a revision of plat for RH Ranch Lot 8. Charlie
Thank
Hastings.
you, Judge. A 10.01 acre tract had previously been improperly divided out of RH Ranch Lot 8. It's a platted lot. This proposal attempts to correct the error by platting Lot 8A with right-of-way along a privately maintained portion of Bias Springs Road. Lot 8A will be 9.67 acres out of existing Lot 8, which was platted as 98 acres. The remainder of Lot 8, 88 acres, must be platted before it can be further developed. This portion of Bias Springs Road is not maintained by Kerr County and will continue to be privately maintained until such time as the road has been brought into compliance with Kerr County road specifications and accepted by the court. There are no known plans to bring this portion of Bias Springs Road into said compliance at this time. County engineer requests the court approve a revision of plat for RH Ranch, part of Lot 8, Volume 3, page 84, Precinct 4.
I move for approval.
Second.
Motion's been made by Commissioner Harris, seconded by Commissioner Baloo, to approve the approval of a revision of plat for RH Ranch Lot 8. Is there any discussion? Questions? Those in favor say aye or raise your hand.
Aye.
Unanimous, 5-0. Okay, the next item on the agenda is item 1.17, consider, discuss, and take appropriate action for the court to approve a revision of plat for the estates at Turtle Creek, Section 2, lots 39 and 40. Charlie Hastings.
Thank you, Judge. The public hearing was held on June 14th, 2021, just a few weeks ago. Nobody spoke at that public hearing. This proposal adjusts the lot line between Lot 39, which is currently 3.27 acres, and Lot 40, currently 2.71 acres. Lot 39R will now become 3.11 acres, and Lot 40R will be 2.87 acres. So there's just a slight adjustment. One lot gets a little bigger, the other lot gets a little smaller. It's a property line issue between these two lots only. Property access and road frontage to both lots remains on Estates Drive. Lot 39 currently has 51.9 feet of frontage on the cul-de-sac and will now have 51.3 feet on the cul-de-sac. We do not see that as an issue. The county engineer requests the court approve a revision of plat for estates at Turtle Creek, Section 2, lots 39 and 40, Volume 6, page 241, Precinct 2.
Move for approval.
Second.
Motion's been made by Commissioner Moser, seconded by Commissioner Letts, to approve the revision of plat for the estates at Turtle Creek, Section 2, lots 39 and 40. Any discussion? Those in favor, raise your hand or say aye.
Aye.
Unanimous, 5-0. Item 1.18, excuse me. I get to go back to 1.5 now. Sorry. 1.5, consider, discuss, and take appropriate action regarding the public notice for Kerr County park closures. Mr. Moser.
Thank you, Judge. When we closed the park for the Texas Archaeological Society for a week duration last week, I received a lot of calls, and probably some of the other commissioners did, about public not having notice that we were closing. And so that disrupted some people using the park, using the dog park, etc. So talked to Shane about this, and the suggestion, recommendation, I don't need to know if we need to take any action, is that when we close parks to the public that are used to using them, that we post a notice in advance, at least a week in advance. The park will be closed, the dates that they'll be closed, so the public will know about it, and not being inconvenienced. There was, it apparently did disrupt some people's life by us not letting them know, even though the decision was made in Commissioner's Court. So I don't know if we need to do anything on this other than just ask the maintenance department, and whenever we do that, have a park closure, which I think is another one coming up in the future request, that we post a notice. So
At the park?
at the park.
I would
Yeah.
add a press release, because we have.
That's good.
A press officer, and then, put it on the she can put it on Facebook and so on. So
That's even
That's good.
better. Okay?
We probably have, maintenance should probably make a generic sign that they can just then put the dates on rather than,
Right.
it's a, road and bridge can probably make that sign.
Right.
Um,
That'd be perfect.
Kelly's back there. Kelly, can y'all make a sign?
We can get a sign for them.
Okay.
Okay. All right. Good enough. I don't think it takes any court action.
No.
Just
Okay.
okay.
Very
Good
good.
enough. Thanks.
Moving on to item 1.6, consider, discuss, and take appropriate action regarding contract with Total Com Management to upgrade the fire panel monitoring system in the courthouse. Shane Evans.
Good morning. To accept the contract with Total Com Management as presented for the upgrade of the fire panel and the monitoring of that fire panel.
Is that in the budget?
Yes, sir.
County attorneys?
I've reviewed it and made changes that they've included.
Okay. I'll go for approval.
Second.
Motion's been made by Commissioner Letts and seconded by Commissioner Moser to approve the contract that is within the budget for Total Com Management to upgrade the fire paneling monitoring system here at the courthouse. Any discussion? Those in favor, raise your hand or say aye.
Aye.
Unanimous, 5-0. We've got the sheriff up for the next several. Item 1.7, consider, discuss, and take appropriate action to approve a $500 donation from Direct Fluids LLC for the Sheriff's Special Response Team Fund. Sheriff Lathrop.
Can we do 1.7, 1.8 together, Judge?
Let me call, and, okay, let's do 1.7. Consider, discuss, and take appropriate action to approve a $500 donation from Direct Fluids LLC for the Sheriff's Special Response Fund.
The 1.8 also. So.
1.8 is consider, discuss, and take appropriate action to approve an $850 donation from Cecil Atkinson Motors for the Sheriff's Special Response Team Fund. And 1.9 is to consider, discuss, and take appropriate action to approve a $25 donation from a citizen for the Sheriff's Equipment Fund.
Yeah, okay, Judge, Commissioners, I'm looking for y'all's approval to be able to accept these donations for our special response team and also our equipment fund.
Move for approval.
Second.
Motion been made by Commissioner Moser, seconded by Commissioner Letts to approve the donations, the $500 donation, the $850 donation, and the $25 donation to the Sheriff's Office. Any discussion? Those in favor, raise your hand or say aye.
Aye.
5-0 on all of them.
Thank you,
Sheriff. Item 1.10, consider, discuss, and take appropriate action to reappoint Marie Hardy to the Emergency Services District Number 2 Board for an additional 2-year term. Commissioner Harris.
Yes, Marie Hardy's done an excellent job serving her first term on the ESD number 2, and I move that we appoint her for an additional 2-year term.
Second.
Motion's been made by Commissioner Harris, seconded by Commissioner Ballou, to reappoint Marie Hardy to the ESD number 2 Board for an additional 2-year term. Any discussion? Those in favor, raise your hand or say aye.
Aye.
Unanimous, 5-0. Okay. Now we go to item 1.18. Consider, discuss, and take appropriate action to eliminate the additional step increase for certain certifications.
The following, the next, 5 or 6 items are all related. They're kind of taking action on things that were discussed in workshops. This first one is to, there are...
You want me to go ahead and call all of them?
No, I think they're already, so we need a separate court order for each one.
Okay.
That is to, there weren't a whole lot of departments that had certification, but we were getting more and more cases, and the recommendation is for elected officials or department heads to incorporate the need for the certifications into their job descriptions, and that they, so that the employees would get it. This largely impacts the sheriff's department, where they used to be when they were a master police officer, they got an increase in other ones. But this way, he is, I think, going to adjust his job descriptions that will incorporate basically an increase when they get certifications. And the same thing happens in Road and Bridge, there was a certification for pesticide license, and that's just being incorporated into, not everyone out there needs it, but those that do, incorporate it into their job description.
And veteran service officer has got
Yeah,
a certification.
Right. So this would, court order would eliminate all of those certifications, and then job descriptions would need to be adjusted accordingly.
Okay. So is that a motion?
And that's a motion.
Second.
Okay, motion's been made by Commissioner Letts, seconded by Commissioner Moser, to eliminate any additional step increase from certifications for Sheriff's Office, Road and Bridge, and Veteran Services. Correct? Any other discussion? Those in favor, raise your hand and say aye.
Aye.
Unanimous, 5-0. Item 1.19, consider, discuss, and take appropriate action to eliminate car allowance for all offices.
This is one, I believe, I could be wrong, most departments got rid of car allowances a while back, but some didn't. I know the 216th DA is one that has it, and our current does have a car allowance listed. The current policy is that any travel outside of Kerr County is reimbursable. Any travel within Kerr County is not reimbursable. It should be built into their budgets as mileage reimbursement. This is just a way to get everything consistent across the board. So I'll make a motion to eliminate all car allowances, and all county departments will follow Kerr County policy. And if that policy isn't clearly written, Jennifer, we need to add that into the policy.
Second.
A motion's been made by Commissioner Letts, seconded by Commissioner Moser, to eliminate car allowances for all offices and departments. And
Inside the county.
Inside the county.
Inside the county.
Well,
Will
Yes,
this
ma'am.
start with the beginning of the next budget year or immediately?
I'd say the next budget year is going to be simple.
any discussion?
I would say that we ought to, there might be some extenuating circumstances which would need to be brought back to the court. And I don't know what it might be, what it could possibly be, but it might come
We
up.
can make
Somebody
some-
has to do a lot of runs for a while or something. We have elections and stuff like that. People do a lot of driving around. So I would say it should be reviewed on a case-by-case basis.
Well, anything can come back to the court. Always.
All we've got on the agenda is the car allowance.
I know.
And we heard from Judge Ragsdale at the last workshop about some discrepancies that we might ought to want to consider with regard to what we do in county. But since that's not on the agenda today, all we've got here is the car allowance.
We can always take exceptions.
Yeah.
I just wanted to make sure everybody understands that this is not slamming the door shut in time.
I think, well, it's not that item maybe needs to be back on the agenda because there's some other options of how we solve that problem.
Well, the point that Judge Ragsdale made was that when the bank's on your way home, it's easy. When it's the other way from home, then you're adding, to your mileage and so on.
Makes sense to me.
Makes sense.
So then I have a question. How do we come to the court for an exception? Because that's my situation too. I have an employee that comes to the courthouse every day. It's 1.2 miles each way for a total of about 4 miles per day. That adds up in a week, in a month, and in a year. Other employees, we can get around that. For example, we also have to go to the court in Gillespie County, but I have an employee that lives in Gillespie County, and so she leaves early or she comes in a little late so she can stop by. She does not get a car allowance for that reason. But Cammie Feldman gets a car allowance because she does come to the courthouse in her own vehicle every day. So that's the question. How would we request an exception?
No, she's an elected official who can put that in her budget.
It's still a policy. That's our policy.
Well,
and we've done it with, I think, all offices follow that. And I think that we need to put it on the agenda because there are a lot of exceptions. I mean, there's a lot of times when, there's not a lot of exceptions in my mind, but there's a lot of times when individuals and employees are using their personal cars business. Sometimes it's by choice, sometimes it's because there's no other option. And I think that we need to look at that, but I think that it's a huge, it's not a simple thing because the elections department, see they need here, when there's elections, they drive a great deal.
I know.
There's, every office has to, that's not in the courthouse, or basically has to get money to the treasurer every day just about. So, I mean, there's a lot of departments that this impacts, and I think we need to look at a policy, but this, right now, just get rid of the car allowance, because there's only two or three employees that get that right.
So then when we come back to this, we can maybe answer Lucy's question.
Yes.
Right,
Well-
because right now, I just thought it would save paperwork and time. This same employee also drives to Gillespie County twice a month, and she lives here in Kerrville. The attorneys go, for example, Melissa in the last 2 weeks has gone to Fredericksburg at least 3 times each week to get ready for hearings this week. And instead of having all that paperwork that goes with filling out a mileage slip every time, turning it into the auditor's office, and having to keep up with it, because when I used to have to do that, they would frequently call me and say, you haven't cashed your check, we're going to cancel that one, we're going to send you another one. So I thought to eliminate that, we would just, and we did put some thought into it. We, Tessa, who lives in Fredericksburg, does not get a car allowance because if we have court in Gillespie County, she drives from home. And then if we finish early, she has to drive into work, but she would have done that anyway, even if we hadn't had court, so she doesn't get paid to drive in. That's something she would have had to do anyway. But the attorneys frequently have to interview witnesses, go talk to experts, including in San Antonio. And so we've kind of tried to guess how much that would be yearly, just to save everybody time and effort in having to fill out all the paperwork that's needed to get reimbursed for mileage. Quite frankly, I think Melissa would make more money getting reimbursed per trip versus her car allowance. So that's just my thought, and we've already put some thought into it. My office manager also drives to Fredericksburg a couple times a month at least, and then sometimes she will cover for Cammie when she's off, and on Fridays when Cammie is off, she works 10-hour days, 4 days a week. So we've already kind of tried to guess about how much money we need for that car allowance, how much they would get reimbursed anyway for miles, so that's why we did it.
There's another reason why I'm against car allowance, and correct me, Auditor, if I'm wrong on this, but I'm pretty sure this is the way it used to be, that's changed. Car allowances are rolled up into your income. And we pay, in addition to the car allowance, we're paying 30% more for the roll-ups. So there's a hidden cost on using the car allowance, and it's increasing your income. So whereas if you get reimbursed for the actual mileage based on the IRS rate, which is what we use, that's not taxable income. So there's a benefit to both the employees and the governor, the county, for not using car allowances, because it's a hidden cost both ways. And the employees that you mentioned, I know it's a little bit of work, but it's, a form can be written out pretty easy. I don't think it's the mileage, just write the dates you're going.
So is there a motion?
My motion is to eliminate car allowances for all departments, and then we can put on a future agenda about use of personal vehicles.
Yeah, I think I seconded it.
Yes.
Yeah.
So the motion's been made by Commissioner Letts and seconded by Commissioner Moser to eliminate car allowances for all offices. Any other discussion? Those in favor, raise your hand or say aye.
Aye.
5-0. Item 1.20, consider, discuss, and take appropriate action to change vacation time and sick time to paid time off, or PTO. Ms. Dawes.
Good morning. Well, Commissioner Letts' name is on this, so.
Well, I'll introduce it. This is a pretty major change. I think it's a benefit to the employees. I think a lot of, I haven't heard anything, or very little negative about it. And basically, it'll be eliminating sick time and vacation and calling it all paid time off. And then there's some allowance, those people or employees that have accumulated sick time. There's a way that we're going to hold part of that, and I'll let Dennis go over the details of that, and then part of it goes into family time, whatever we call it, FMLA.
Right.
So Jennifer?
Okay. We're asking that you consider this PTO. Basically, full-time employees would earn 6.15 hours per pay period. That equates to 160 hours per year, which is the same that we would receive based on the old vacation sick leave method. And anyone with 10 or more years of service would receive 7.7 hours biweekly, which equates to 200 hours per year. Anyone with 21 or more years of service would get 9.23 hours each biweekly, which equates to 240 hours per year. So you could also be eligible, or you could carry over 320 hours at each fiscal year, and that's more than we had previously. In the event that you ever reach over the 320 hours, those hours would be transferred to the Family Medical Leave Sick Bank for each employee, and that bank would not exceed 720 hours like our sick leave maximum now. Now, upon termination, you would only be reimbursed for PTO balance of up to 160 hours, which is currently what we have with vacation. So basically the way that it would work is anybody that has whatever your vacation balance is as of September 30th, those hours will be transferred to PTO. Sick balance is up to 160 hours will remain in the sick balance budget or bucket. Anything over 160 hours will be transferred to the FMLA sick. So you would no longer receive sick accruals, but we ask that if you are sick, you are going to use your sick time, that you bring down that balance first before you use your PTO.
Any feedback from the employees on this?
Everyone I've spoken with likes it a lot.
Okay. Okay.
And also, you have to be here to take the time. You have to be here at least 1 month. 1 month of continuous service time. And you can only use what you've accrued up to that point.
And so the public knows what we're doing. These are items that we discussed in a recent workshop, and instead of forgetting to enact the orders, we're taking them up as we do this incrementally. And so these are all things that have been thoroughly discussed prior to today.
And this one took, it was a challenge to write the policy. I will say Jennifer did a really good job. I mean, a lot of conversations back and forth, trying to get this so it works, and protecting the employees that do have it, mostly that have sick time accrued.
Is it going to be complicated to keep track of it?
No more than it is now.
Well, that's a good answer.
And long term it'll get easier.
Well, only because they'll understand it.
Well, no, because you'll eventually the employees that have accumulated sick time, that bank will go down to zero. Once it goes to zero, it disappears. You won't have to keep track of that anymore.
Now you know why Jennifer's background in the auditor's office helps to her for her human resources position.
So, like if somebody had 1,238 hours of sick time, that will remain.
Your first 160 will remain in your sick bucket, and everything else gets transferred to the FMLA sick bucket. So you could still use it, you know.
So that if it's FMLA, you would be using it on like doctor's appointments and things like that, or would you?
You could.
It's like to go get a physical, you could use.
Well, that's where you would use that's where you would use PTO.
Okay. So the stipulation on that is that it could go, most of it would go into an FMLA, so it would have to be a qualified
Right.
FMLA.
Right.
So there is a little bit of cash.
Some of my employees were asking me about it. We know nothing about what was offered or going to be offered. So this is the first we've heard of it. Besides, when it was on Commissioner's Court last week, I had the Chief Deputy watch, and she said nothing came about. So, I don't know who all was questioned, but we, in my office, didn't get anything.
It was a workshop, and a lot of people were, a lot of officers were here. But the last reason it was on the last agenda is because I wasn't here. I kind of was working with Jennifer a lot on it. But I mean, the policy is basically, I mean, as Jennifer just outlined, I mean, we haven't had any employees or department heads that didn't like it.
I'm not saying that. I'm saying we didn't know what was
right.
going to be proposed.
Right. It was discussed at a workshop and kind of decided at the workshop, trying to figure out how what to do with the accrued sick time. And then the idea was that we wanted to get, the judge said, a specific court order and a policy before we approved it. And,
Well, this was the first time it was actually articulated like that in court and all laid out. Are you saying you want more time to think about it? Is that?
No, I'm just saying it would have been nice to know how it was articulated so everybody knew, because
But it really wasn't
our
until just
long-term
now.
employees, especially the ones in my office, are concerned that they're going to lose some of their time. And I said, I have no idea. So, I mean,
Well, we would never,
watch YouTube.
we would never create a policy where anybody lost anything. And I hesitated to put it on the agenda or to share it, not put it on the agenda, but to share it until the court had approved it, so.
and we could pass on it if employees want to look at it and get more feedback. Charlie's, some of them that have looked at it are more, that have looked at it are.
They liked it.
They like it.
I mean,
What
I agree,
Kelly
it's
just
a good
asked
policy,
on-
it just to ease their minds,
Yeah.
to see where they stand with it.
Well, I don't see any problem in delaying it till the next court session, so everybody can make sure they've had a chance to
Not
look at
very
it. Right.
So right now, if an employee doesn't use their sick time, they lose it, don't they?
They lose it.
Just- Yeah.
I'm talking, or,
In my first 20 years, in my 20 years assistant DA, I took 2 days of sick leave the entire 20 years, and I lost all that.
yeah.
Well, I was in the same boat, Lucy.
No, we can pass on it. It's not a,
Let's do that, let everybody take a look
We'll
at it.
look at it, everybody's happy.
Yeah.
So we'll pass on item 1.20.
Sure.
yeah.
We'll move on to item 1.21. Consider, discuss, and take appropriate action to approve a revised longevity plan.
Yeah. I'll look at something.
The only modification that was made to what was handed out to you after Tanya reviewed it, she would like, I think it's a great idea, to add in 4 more years of continuous service as of September 30th each year.
I have just to kind of summarize the longevity plan. The current longevity plan will be addressed in the next agenda item. This is a new policy, basically. And the plan is to give after your 4th year, you get a check in December, early December, for $60 per year of service. So after your 4th year, beginning into your 5th year, you get $240 in December. The following year, it goes up to $300. It goes up $60 every year. And it continues through 40 years of service. So you would max out at $2,400 at 40 years. This is a longevity policy. It's actually a true longevity policy. This is modeled after what really most counties that have a longevity policy have something similar to this. Their numbers may be a little bit different, but this is something that we currently don't have, and it's just a new benefit to the employees.
But this is longevity, not longevity merit. Right?
Correct, it's longevity.
Right.
Now, is this sort of taking the place of merit pay?
No.
No.
It's the reason I took merit out.
The merit should not
Yeah.
go through, correct?
Okay. Not that it doesn't walk like a duck and sound like a duck.
No, this has nothing to do with merit. Merit's on here a lot later. But I'll make a motion to approve the longevity policy as presented.
Second.
Motion's been made by Commissioner Letts, seconded by Commissioner Moser to approve the revised longevity plan as presented. Any discussion?
Yeah, I
Kelly?
would like to know, has anybody calculated first year? The amount?
The auditor has.
What does it cost for first year?
I think it was, go ahead.
Yeah, Jennifer calculated it, it's about $125,000 for the first year that goes into implementation. So with the roll-ups, we're looking at about $154,000.
for the upcoming fiscal year.
Yes.
It's a new, first time.
And it'll be about that same, I mean, roughly that amount every year.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Kelly?
But that's a brand new expense.
I have one question, and I think I know the answer because I expressed the concern to Commissioner Les, but I'm somebody that my anniversary date is like September 9th, and so I will have completed, you know, for my 19th, I will have completed that, and so, but my paycheck doesn't reflect it until the next fiscal year, so do you understand what I'm saying? That do I not get, because I've already worked the time, and then because my check goes into next fiscal year,
The start date is for calculating this, I think we settled on this, and we went through a lot, is the month after your date of your first month of employment. So if you start on the 15th of May, your first month for credit is June. If you start the 31st of May, it's June. If you're the 1st of May, it's June. It's a little bit rather than keeping track of this part. So the effective date is the month after the date of employment.
so mine would be October 9th.
No, it'd be
October.
October. It's no 9th, it's October. Do your credit for October.
It's moving to months and not specific dates.
Okay, so again, what does that mean? Does it mean my pay rate changes, or does it mean that I get a lump sum check?
Well, the longevity is a separate check. This is not part of your payroll. This will be a check, and you get that check in December based on, you know.
I'm changing my return.
It's going to be based on, you're going to get that years of service based on October.
Okay. The only reason I'm asking, because if I would have started in August, that my pay rate would have changed this fiscal year.
But this has nothing to do with pay rate.
There's nothing to do.
Nothing to do with pay rate.
Just longevity.
All
period.
employees get the same amount, and it starts, your calculation of your length of service starts the month after your date, your month of employment.
And I think Kelly's talking about the current longevity plan. Her anniversary falls in September, and that's in another agenda item.
That's another agenda item.
Okay.
Two different subjects.
Sort of.
Yeah.
I have a question. So, our new fiscal year, if this goes into effect, anything we have as longevity on our position schedule is null and void.
No.
No,
Say what?
it stays there, everything is there.
Right, for longevity though, because they're used to
It's
getting
changing,
2.5%.
it's changing, that's a new policy that's getting ready to be addressed.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
It's-
That is no longer longevity. At 2.5, this is the longevity
We
policy.
just have the start dates on the position schedule for the longevity, that's it.
Right.
That's it.
Yeah, start date's all that matters for longevity policy.
And this goes into effect next fiscal year.
Any other discussion? We've got a motion and a second. Motion was made by Mr. Letts, second by Mr. Moser, to approve the revised longevity policy plan. Those in favor, say aye or raise your hand.
Aye.
Unanimous, 5-0. Moving on to 1.22, consider, discuss, and take appropriate action to approve a payroll market adjustment plan.
This is the 2.5%, and it was a big surprise to me and maybe to the rest of the corp, but I know to myself, that when we did the salary study, the reason we were competitive is because of the longevity, what we used to call the longevity policy. And I think that we need to keep a plan like that in place. We've never really done, we call it COLA a lot of times, but we've never really done a true COLA. We've kind of taken arbitrary, we look at different things and pick a number. So this basically, we call it a market adjustment plan, just because salaries do increase. It's like the old longevity plan, with the exception you do not get a 2.5% increase after your first year. You get it at your fourth year, 7th, 10th, 13th on through your career as an employee. One of the interesting things about this, when it came to the salary, so the average length of employment in Kerr County is 8.7 years, which is a lot less than I really thought. And that's, so this, is market adjustment is just like it says. It keeps us competitive and keeps our salaries in line with what we, have historically found.
And my only question, will we still cap it after 20 years? There was talk in our meetings about not capping it. I don't know if a decision had been made.
Tanya, do you look at how much, what the additional cost would be?
I did.
I think. I thought we did, and it wasn't.
That was the
longevity.
Longevity was not a huge increase.
My understanding is we were keeping the current grade and step just like it is.
Okay. So cap it at 20
So
years.
it is capped at 20 years.
Okay.
Or step, 20 years. With that, I'll make a motion to approve the new market adjustment plan.
I'll second.
Motion's been made by Commissioner Letts, seconded by Commissioner Moser to approve the payroll market adjustment plan as presented. Is there any discussion? Any further discussion? Those in favor, raise your hand or say aye.
Aye.
5-0. Passes.
The next one, Judge, if we could pass, the next one is to adopt the salary survey. Still looking at some adjustments to that, looking at some salary ranges in the attorney's areas, and there's some employees that were listed as open range. I'm talking to those department heads or elected officials to see if we can get everybody off of the open range. So we'll have two categories, exempt employees and those in second grade, and some exempt are on second grade also, but open range.
How does that work? What distinguishes who's going to be on second grade elected?
Well, no one's all elected.
Is that what you just said?
I said we're looking, that's one of the things we're looking at. There are a few exempt employees that are also on a step and grade, and we're looking at that. But the open range is the issue, and to be honest, I didn't know we had employees that were on open range. We're looking into it. We're just trying to get everybody who is not exempt on the step and grade system.
Is exempt not elected? Is there some
The
other
department
category?
heads are exempt. And most department heads are exempt. We would say all of them. And attorneys are exempt. All of our attorneys are exempt.
I know the attorneys are exempt.
So we have quite a few exempt employees, but we're trying to get in line with the IRS rules, what's exempt and what's not exempt, and making sure we're consistent.
We might not even be doing that right. Is that what you're suggesting?
We're just making sure, we're just double checking. So we're not ready to take action on that yet. It'll be brought back.
And for those of you that haven't discerned, we're trying to make things a little bit more standard and predictable, so everybody knows exactly where to stand. Let's move on to item 1.24, which is to consider, discuss, and take appropriate action to cancel the current merit pay policy.
We currently have a policy that we.
I thought we did that last.
No, you got rid of doing it last. You got rid of doing it last time, but it's still a policy. And the policy that's written doesn't work real well, and we need to eliminate that policy. If we choose to bring back a new policy, so be it. But the current policy this hasn't worked very well, and we're not and we didn't use it last time. So I make a motion that we cancel the current merit pay policy.
Discussion. I'd rather see, instead of canceling it, change it. If we're going to change it, change it. Okay.
But we tried to figure out how to do that.
Well, but I still think merit pay is a good thing to have. We didn't last year just because of so many people, or from my opinion, getting so much COVID support, we didn't need to have other taxpayers pay for merit pay last year. Okay? But I think that there's nothing wrong with having a merit pay policy. We need to define it better. It's okay. But I don't go along with canceling it until we have something to replace it or think about it. So.
I mean, I'm not opposed to bringing something back, but I don't like having a policy that we know is not working in place. We can always bring back a new policy in my mind. And I think that there is some, I was talking to VA, Rookie, and, you know, I think there is probably a need for some sort of merit policy.
Yeah.
But there needs to be, well, the current policy doesn't work. And it hasn't, nobody seemed real happy with it when we did it several years ago. Last year, we didn't do it at all. So my recommendation, I'd like to motion that we, I think I did already.
You got a motion, and you got a second. Motion. Okay, okay.
And I'm not opposed to relooking at a new one, but the current one does not work well.
The impulse is good, the idea is good. How to implement it in the structure that we have here was the hard part, and so.
I agree.
It just creates
with
trouble.
We can always bring something back, but this has been a mess, and I think we need to do away with policy, but we can always bring something back better later on.
Okay, we've got a motion by Commissioner Letts and a second by Commissioner Harris to cancel the current merit pay policy at this time. Any other discussion? Those in favor, raise your hand or say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? 3-1. 4-1. Excuse me, 4-1.
Who was the dissenting vote?
Me.
Commissioner Moser.
And,
Let's go to.
And I want to thank Tanya and Jennifer both. We're really working on all these policies. We talked all about it in workshops. And I thought it was important that we had individual court orders so we can track what we've done, because these are some pretty significant policy changes. And I think overall it's a pretty good benefit and improvement in our benefits for the employees.
Good. We have item 1.25, which is on our addendum agenda. Consider, discuss, and take appropriate action to accept the donation of $500 from a citizen to be added to the operating equipment line in item 10-642-569. Reagan Gibbons.
Yes, sir. Just request, we received a donation of $500, and I wanted to, we didn't have a specific purpose for it, so I wanted to put it in our operating equipment line item. I need to spend a little money in there to install a watch guard system when I get it that wasn't anticipated.
I'll move for approval.
Second.
Motion's been made by Commissioner Letts, seconded by Commissioner Blue to approve accepting a $500 donation to be added to the operating equipment line item. Any discussion? Those in favor, raise your hand or say aye.
Aye.
5-0. Okay, very good. Let's move on to the approval agenda. Pay bills.
Invoices for today's consideration, $534,194.03.
Move for approval.
Second.
Motion's been made by Commissioner Moser, seconded by Commissioner Letts to pay the bills as presented. Those in favor, raise your hand or say aye.
Aye.
Unanimous, 5-0. Budget amendments.
Yes, we have 7 today, 4 are line item transfers within their department: animal control, human resources, county attorney, county court of law. The last 3 are the auditor certifying new revenue for the special response team in the sheriff's department, vehicle repair in the sheriff's department, and operating equipment in the animal control department.
Move for approval.
Second.
Motion's been made by Commissioner Letts, seconded by Commissioner Moser to approve the budget amendments as presented. Any discussion? Those in favor, raise your hand or say aye.
Aye.
5-0. Late bills.
We have $1,982.95 for late bills.
Move for approval.
Second.
And motion's been made by Commissioner Blue, seconded by Commissioner Moser to approve the payment of the late bills as presented. Those in favor, raise your hand or say aye.
Aye.
5-0. 2.4, Auditor Reports.
Yes, we have one internal audit for the Justice of the Peace Precinct 4, and we're asking that you accept the audit report.
Move for approval.
Second. Motion been made by Commissioner Baloo, seconded by Commissioner Letts to approve the audit report as presented. Any discussion? Those in favor, raise your hand or say aye. 5-0. 2.5, monthly reports.
Yes, we have monthly reports for May from the Environmental Health Department, Animal Control Services, and the County Auditor. I'll move to accept all monthly reports.
Second.
Okay, the motion's been made by Commissioner Letts, seconded by Commissioner Moser to approve the monthly reports as presented. Any discussion? Those in favor, raise your hand or say aye.
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 5-0. Court orders.
We have our court orders from the June 14th meeting, court orders 38747 through 38773. I was not at that meeting, but Commissioner Harris had looked over them and thought they all looked fine. And then from the June 21st meeting, we have court orders 38774 and 38776, and I reviewed those and they look fine, so I'll make the motion to approve both sets of court orders.
Second.
Okay, motion's been made by Commissioner Letts, seconded by Commissioner Baloo to approve the court orders as presented. Those in favor, raise your hand or say aye.
Aye.
Unanimous, 5-0. Information agenda. Any status reports from department heads? 3.2, any status reports from elected officials? Sheriff.
I just want to kind of update you on a couple of things in reference to the jail. When I got in office, we're around 200 people in jail, around 200, 205, and then for several months we're around 220. Here recently we've jumped up to 235. I think this is, with COVID raising. And the good thing about that is that's out-of-county prisoners have gone up, which obviously goes to the general fund, which I look for that to continue to go up. Just kind of want to keep you all updated on that. We went from my time from about 200 to 235. Also, Commissioner Moser, I know you've kind of been keeping an eye on the open borders. Had our third pursuit Friday, caught three got away, tried to get a helicopter, wasn't available, couldn't, search for several hours. The position that puts me in, all of our manpower's out there, which leaves the rest of the county vulnerable. We've had one other incident in addition to that wasn't a pursuit, but like I said, I look for just a matter of time before, it gets worse. I've started meeting with the sheriffs, surrounding sheriffs. We meet once a month to kind of discuss. Thank God for us, Gillespie County is getting a bulk of the pursuits. They're starting to cut up 290, and he's having more incidents. Kimball County's having a lot of incidents, but just kind of let y'all know, I look for that to be rising in time as time goes on. My understanding, I've been staying in touch with DPS. They're going to be down there 3 years. When I was there, I was 3 years. It's a 3-year project. So, which also we don't have many troopers, maybe one for 3 counties, but I just look for things to get busier.
Okay, thank you. Any other elected officials have status reports? Okay, any liaison commissioner reports? That's pretty well talked it out.
Yeah.
Anything else? Okay, then that will leave us, we'll adjourn this meeting and go into executive session to discuss a personnel matter, to consider, discuss, and take appropriate action regarding personnel item at the Hill Country Regional Public Defender's Office. So we will stand in recess and go into executive session. There was a second addendum that we took up in executive session, which was 4.2 personnel matters. B, which was to consider, discuss, and take appropriate action to discuss salary survey related to specific employees, which we did, but we're not taking any action today. So, with that, there being nothing else on the agenda for today, we are adjourned.
Hey there, Bruce.
All these